What do you say, guys? With Thom Abraham, I'm Mick Gillispie. This is our recording for the Tailgate Show, which will be Friday night at the floor of Bama and then air Saturday in, around the state of Alabama, including 97.7 ESPN The Zone in North Alabama. Early one, Alabama and Kentucky. But you like those early games, don't you, Thom? Anytime you can get up and get it finished.
Of all weeks, though. Of all weeks, once a quarter, my church does food ministry where, we get a harvest food truck and we feed 800 people. And I'm kind of the floor manager for that, the inside guy for that, running, 30 volunteers. And it'll start at about 7:00 on Saturday morning. And hopefully we can get out of there by noon. We'll have the game on various radio broadcasts of it, which is better than having to listen to Joe Tessitore, that's for sure. But We'll have the game on. The guy who is the head guy of the whole thing is also a huge Alabama fan. So of all weeks to have an 11:00 game, it has to be the week that we have food ministry at the church. So,
that'll give you some background noise when you guys are up there working hard, right?
Exactly.
What do you think? We're going to start the radio show here in a second, but this is something I wouldn't cover on the radio show, but I'd love to get your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Danielson. Everybody hates him, but maybe you're not. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're the guy that actually likes him.
I've always had a great relationship with him. He's always been a friend of the show. His spotter is a longtime friend of mine, a regular on my show, David Moulton, who works right alongside Gary. Gary has come on the show. I can't even count how many times. I think the biggest issue has been with Gary Danielson for the most part is he's got a little bit of that, you ain't from around these parts, are you? The fact that he's a Big Ten guy, maybe that's something, although Todd Blackledge, also was. And so, I don't know why fans feel that way. I know during the Tim Tebow years, everybody thought he was a Florida honk. He lives in Southwest Florida. But I think Danielson does really a pretty good job. I really do.
Really?
And, yeah, I do. I think he's a lot more fair and balanced than people think.
Well, I don't think that's not that to me. I'm not one of the guys that goes, oh, you know what? He's pulling for the other team.
Yeah.
I just don't find him enjoyable. He's not a person that I would want to sit next to at a bar and talk sports with. I hear his opinions and I'm like, and look, he's not on my show. I don't know him personally. Yeah. I understand how difficult the being a color guy and analyst is. And I just don't think he's good at it. That's just my opinion. And when I say that, I'm not trying to take a shot at him. I'm just saying, like, part of what we do is entertaining. And to me, he's not entertaining. He's just annoying, So
18 years there, and they have had the number one, game of the week. Their ratings average higher than anybody. For 18 years, he's been the color guy and the number one highest rated broadcast each weekend. So I don't know. I like Herb Street better, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
As far as color guy goes, but I don't know. Like I say, I'm jaded. I just think he's a good guy. Here's a funny backstory on Gary Danielson, though. You cannot talk to him about when he was benched for Bernie Kosar at the Cleveland Browns. He gets very, very bitter about it, and he just says, "Just don't ask me. Don't ever ask me about my time." He enjoyed being with the Browns, but the circumstances around which he got benched halfway through Bernie Kosar's rookie year bothers him to this day.
Wow.
And he will not talk. I don't know if he doesn't have a good relationship with Bernie now or what the deal is, but he will not talk about, hey, tell me what it was like, mentoring Bernie Kosar. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. And that, you know what, I definitely could understand that. I'll tell you, there was a guy named Joe Morgan. You know him. Some of the people watching probably don't, but he was on. He's a Hall of Fame second baseman, and he was also on ESPN forever with John Miller. And a lot of people didn't like him, but I loved him. So I get it, and it wasn't until I read John Miller's book that I got what was going on in that broadcast. Like, hey, you can't do these broadcasts, national television broadcasts, and not say something, because a lot of these guys don't want to say something, and then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to look at it through that prism, and it changed my perspective. And then all of a sudden I got a lot more enjoyment out of watching this.
You know who I don't like on the broadcast, and I hate to say this because he sat with me for an hour and we did a show together in Nashville once is John Smoltz. And Smoltz,
really,
he looks at everything from the pitcher's perspective. Everything. And every time a guy gets a hit, it's because the pitcher put a ball in a bad spot and he made a bad pitch and the guy hit it. Everything comes from the pitcher's perspective with John Smoltz. Listen to him, and it's just he's a total honk for the pitchers. And if anybody gets on base, it's because the pitcher made a mistake.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like Smoltzy. So, but I've heard other people say
I like
that
him
too.
Personally. We had a great time together doing the show and everything. I just don't like his work as a broadcaster.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and to me, I love when he's on there. But I've heard that you're not the only one. Like a lot of people have complained about this postseason.
Yeah. I just don't like his work as because he just looks at everything one-sided.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I'm going to play the band music, and you and I are going to talk about Alabama football. But have a great weekend at the taking care of the hungry, and great work, man. God bless you.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing to do, and we have a great staff, that handles it. So I really enjoy it, and it's once a quarter, and it had to be when Alabama had an 11 o'clock game.
Right. That's so funny. All right, here we go. We're going into Radio Land, and you and I are transforming ourselves to Saturday morning across the state of Alabama and Pensacola. Great to have all you guys back as we get ready for Alabama and Kentucky. That's an 11 o'clock kickoff Central Time, Lexington Kroger Field. Big game for the Crimson Tide, and we're covering it here on the original Bama Football Tailgate Show, always brought to you by Yuengling Lager, America's oldest brewery, and really happy to be at the Floribama on the line, Perdido Key, for the show. Coming at us next, as he does every week from North Alabama, Huntsville area, 97.7 ESPN The Zone, Mr. Thom Abraham, host of the Thom Abraham Show Daily. What's up, Tom?
I want to be at the Floribama, man. I love Perdido Key. I love going down there. And, the cold weather has rolled in up here in North Alabama. I wouldn't mind being down there hanging out at the Floribama for sure, even though it's 7 o'clock in the morning. it's crazy.
Well, come on down, man. I mean, maybe next game we're going to be here every time Alabama plays on the road. This is our home. So I'd love to have you come in and hang out with us in person and have some bushwhackers and enjoy the sunset. Even this time of year is nice.
Yeah. No, it is. It's beautiful down there.
Let me remind you that this segment's brought to you by Visit Sevierville. It's a great time with fall in full bloom to visit the Smoky Mountains. Visit Sevierville.com/fall for anything you need as far as guides and points of interest and all that stuff as well. Jalen Milroe has a superpower with his legs. Whew. They could not stop him, LSU. Unbelievable 4 touchdowns. Didn't even need to throw the football.
Did Alabama have this in the package all along and just not spring it? I mean, were they waiting till later in the season for the LSU game? You don't want to run them 15, 18 times a game and take the chance of getting them banged up throughout the season. I mean, we've been hollering and screaming for this for so long, all season long. And now all of a sudden, he's they had all these plays called for him as a runner. And it was so dynamic, and it opened up the passing game, and it opened up the other parts of the running game as well. And it was really neat to see. So I don't know, maybe Tommy Rees is crazy like a fox, and he was just holding this package until we got to late in the season or needed it against LSU.
I've been under the impression that he was injured going into the Texas A&M game, something that prevented him to run, and he's healthy. And you could see it kind of in that Tennessee game. But it still wasn't what we saw the first game of the season. And the effort that he had, and Tom, you go back with me. I mean, we're a couple of Bama OGs. It was like Sean Alexander, 96, down in Baton Rouge. I mean, this was, in this series, it was an historical performance.
It was, and his ability to put the foot in the ground and just accelerate was really amazing. I mean, some of the things that he was able to do on a couple of those runs, and I love the one where he just kind of drifted along the line of scrimmage for a moment. It almost looked like he was going to toss it out to the running back who was off to his left, and then just all of a sudden, like a seed coming out of a grape, boom, right into the end zone. He shoots. He just has that innate ability. And earlier this week, I saw one article that had Tim Tebow's name in the same headline as Jalen Milroe, and how Jalen Milroe is, on the Tim Tebow path. All of a sudden, he went from being a guy that, couldn't play his way out of a paper bag, and now he's being referred to as a potential Tim Tebow-like athlete.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, people were mentioning him in the Heisman race after the game on the post-game show I do. I've had people send me the list of the best quarterbacks in the country, and now all of a sudden he's in there, middle of the pack, but would have never expected this the way that the season started. It almost benefited him to have whatever injury kept him from running, because he had to basically be a pocket passer to win some of those games. Now he's healthy again. He's got his, full complement of weapons, and he's really dangerous. Now that leads us into today's game against Kentucky. This is, to me, the perfect trap game.
Yeah.
If Alabama's not careful. I mean, you're talking about two intense rivalry games, and then now Kentucky at 11 o'clock in Lexington, and no one's talking about them.
Yeah, and you look at the tail of the tape, actually they're very similar to Alabama in a number of different ways. Now, a lot of people talk about their rushing attack because they got the running back that ran for like 400 yards against Florida. But they lost 3 straight games after that before they got, the break that everybody needs apparently this season, going up against Mississippi State, and that they got the victory there. But Alabama actually runs the ball a little bit better than Kentucky. They throw the ball a little bit better than Kentucky. Their defense is a little bit better than Kentucky. The points allowed, Kentucky's defense has been pretty stout this year. Alabama's defense, has been, historical at times, and certainly can do some great things. But it is interesting when you look at the numbers this late in the season, where you've got enough numbers, 9 games in, that you can kind of, they mean something. Their numbers are very similar to Alabama's.
Right.
Alabama's just going to completely swamp them with athletes. And you're right. This is about mindset. Continue to play clean ball. Don't have the penalties. Don't have the turnovers. Go there. Take care of business. All the analytics say they got a 99% chance now of winning the West. You don't want to just win the West. I mean, you can win the West by losing again. They got to just win one of the last 2 games against Kentucky or Auburn to win the West. But that's not what they're looking for. They need to get to Atlanta, undefeated in the SEC, and have a chance to make the playoffs. So everything is still right there in front of them. And this one here, they're going to have to take care of an early game in Kentucky and get this thing, get it handled and get back home.
I feel like Alabama, and this is definitely going to be what we're talking about next week. I think Alabama's going to beat Georgia. I think they're going to get there and beat Georgia. They've just got to get there and beat Georgia, like you said, undefeated. But they still don't have a clear path to the national championship.
I think that is a clear path. I think that is a clear path. I think beating Georgia and being 12-1 there is no way. I don't care what Texas does. I don't care what anybody. There is no way that committee will keep a 12-1 SEC champion out of the national championship playoff. I think it is a clear path. I think they start jumping over people. Like, they already got the number 1 schedule now, and that's before they play Georgia in Atlanta. So, that's obviously not going to be an easy game. Let's see what Georgia does today with Ole Miss. I mean, Georgia has a couple of tough tests now all of a sudden, down the stretch. And I think Alabama fans need Georgia to keep winning. I think the interesting thing would be, from a Georgia perspective, if Georgia were to lose to Ole Miss today, let's say, and then turn around and beat Alabama in Atlanta, does that 12-1 SEC champion also still make the college football playoff? But I will debate Alabama not having a clear path. I think they have a clear path. I think they win out. It can't be denied.
But you know what, though? If you got an undefeated Ohio State or Michigan, right, they're in. You get Florida State undefeated, they're in, right? If Washington goes undefeated, they're in. And then all of a sudden it comes down to Texas and Alabama, and if they're both with 1 loss and won their conference, and Texas won the head-to-head matchup, if you leave them out, Texas, which their own conference might be like, hey, Alabama's probably the deserving team, just to put a little salt in the wound. But there's going to be a lot of pissed off people around the world of college football. So
they can be.
It's not a guarantee to me.
They can be upset all they want, but the reality is going to be all the matrix say that Alabama's schedule much more difficult, and that was week 2. That was week 2. What would happen if they played again? I mean, look at Texas is barely getting by in some of their games now. Alabama, they're 4-1 against top 30 teams, and they're blowing beating these teams by 2 touchdowns, while Texas is beating K-State by 3 and hanging on to do it. And now with Oklahoma losing to, Oklahoma beat Texas. Oklahoma got beat by Oklahoma State, who got beat by South Alabama, who got beat by Louisiana. You know what I mean? How far deep? Who got beat by Arkansas State, for God's sake? So how far do you want to go with head-to-head? When you talk about that, I think at the end they won't be able to deny it. But in your scenario, the team that I think is most likely to drop is Washington. I think Washington's hanging by a thread right now, and they got to, I think at some point in time, and then we're going to be talking about a 1-loss Washington and a 1-loss Oregon.
Right.
Everyone talks about Oregon being the number one. Right now they're the number one 1-loss team. In the standings. I'm not sure why. Alabama and Texas number 10 schedule, Alabama number 1 schedule. Alabama and Texas have a better resume than Oregon. Why is Oregon 5 or 6? Texas and Alabama 7 and 8. So it's going to be really interesting. But I can't in my mind. I can't think of a world where a 12-1 SEC champion is not part of the playoff. It just doesn't make any sense.
Make a great point there. It would be it would definitely be a first, right? Yeah. If you kept the SEC out. And you're right. For Oregon, I mean, they do play USC this week, which all of a sudden now has become an easier game. But their strength of schedule, besides the Utah win, Colorado's their next best win. So that's a big drop off from where Alabama is. But the Crimson Tide need to take care of business. And I agree with one of the callers on the postgame show that said Alabama needs style points. I think they need to win these games, and they need to really win these games, not just kind of sneak by. Because if it comes down to, like you said, like they're figuring out whether you got to take Alabama or Texas, and all of a sudden, all of Alabama's wins are blowout wins, it's going to make it easier for the committee to pick Alabama.
Well, that's what they did this past week. They beat LSU by 14, and Texas beats an unranked Kansas State team, hangs on at the end to win by 3. So that's style points there. The style point win over Tennessee, and they got to continue to do that. You're right.
All right. Thom, always great hanging out with you. We do it every single week. Let's get back together and talk about the big matchup with Chattanooga next week.
Yeah, another 11 o'clock game. Besides,
it's gonna be great.
Yeah, another coffee with the Bama Tailgate Show.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that at church, it would have been a perfect week to do the church stuff.
Yeah, next week would have been. Yeah, so they got 11 o'clock next week. I said, I don't care about the.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen.
I want to see this game. Yeah.
All right, guys, that's Thom Abraham, host of the Thom Abraham Show, 97.7 ESPN The Zone up in Huntsville, North Alabama. When we come back, we're going to talk more Alabama and Kentucky. The original Bama football tailgate show rolls on after this.